The afternoon sun hung high over Buckingham Palace, casting long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard. Tourists milled about, their cameras clicking incessantly as they captured images of the magnificent architecture, the grand gates, and, of course, the iconic Queen's Guard. Dressed in immaculate red tunics and towering bearskin hats, the guards stood motionless, silent sentinels of an age-old tradition. Among the sea of visitors was Nathan Sullivan, an American businessman in his early 40s. With his designer sunglasses perched atop his head and a smug grin on his lips, he exuded an air of entitlement. His tailored suit and polished shoes set him apart from the casual tourists, yet his demeanor suggested someone who saw himself as superior rather than simply well-dressed. Nathan had heard about the Queen's Guard before, how they were trained soldiers, how they never reacted to provocations, how they stood resolute no matter the disturbance. To him, it all sounded ridiculous. Soldiers? Please. They're just glorified mannequins in funny hats. That was the thought running through his mind as he approached the guards stationed at the entrance. Among them was Ethan Carter, the man whose sharp blue eyes contrasted against his stoic, disciplined expression. Unlike the carefree tourists, Ethan embodied the weight of duty. He had served in Afghanistan, had seen combat, had lost friends. To him, standing guard at Buckingham Palace was not just a ceremonial assignment, it was a continuation of his service, a symbol of unwavering commitment to something greater than himself. Nathan took his phone out, already recording. He approached Ethan Carter, standing barely inches from the soldier's face. The red-coated guard remained as still as a statue, his gaze fixed forward, unfazed by the intrusion. "Hey mate," Nathan drawled, his American accent thick with mockery. "You blink? No? What about a smile? Come on, let's see some emotion." The crowd around them grew curious. Some tourists started watching, intrigued by the interaction. A few chuckled, assuming it was harmless fun. Others frowned, sensing the disrespect laced in Nathan's tone. Ethan, of course, remained unmoved. Nathan grinned. "Wow, nothing? Not even a little twitch? Man, I think they hired robots." Still no reaction. Nathan leaned in closer, peering directly into Ethan's face. "What do they pay you to do this, huh? Stand here all day and let people laugh at you?" His friends laughed. Some pulled out their own phones, recording from different angles. A little boy in the crowd tugged on his father's sleeve. "Daddy, why is that man being mean to the soldier?" The father hushed his son, his gaze darkening as he watched the scene unfold. Nathan, encouraged by the growing attention, decided to escalate. He waved his hand rapidly in front of Ethan's face, feigning an exaggerated attempt to make the soldier flinch. "Come on, man, give me something." "Nothing." Nathan took a step back and laughed loudly. "You guys seeing this? This is what they call military discipline." The crowd's reaction was shifting. Some still chuckled nervously, but others murmured in disapproval. A woman shook her head. "He's embarrassing himself," she whispered to her husband. Nathan, oblivious or simply uninterested in the shift of public sentiment, turned to his audience. All right, let's try something else." He suddenly posed beside Ethan, mimicking the guard's rigid stance with an exaggerated expression. His friends burst into laughter. A few tourists even snapped pictures, unsure whether to be amused or offended. Still, Ethan Carter did not react. His breath remained steady. His grip on his rifle remained firm. His mind remained locked onto his duty. Nathan wasn't done. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his designer sunglasses, flipping them onto his face. Then, with deliberate slowness, he pulled them down just enough to peer over the lenses at Ethan. "You know," he mused loudly, "back in the States, we have guys who actually do real work. Police, firefighters, soldiers, actual soldiers. Not guys who play dress-up for tourists." A ripple of discomfort spread through the crowd. The murmurs grew louder. Even some of Nathan's friends shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe," Nathan continued, smirking. "I should just..." Before he could finish, a voice cut through the air. "That's enough." The firm tone belonged to an elderly man, a Royal Air Force veteran, standing nearby with his cane. His sharp eyes locked onto Nathan. "You've made your point, son. Now move along," Nathan scoffed, turning toward the veteran. "And what's it to you, old man?" The veteran's jaw tightened. "Respect," he said simply. Nathan rolled his eyes. "Oh, please? You really think this is about respect? This is about proving a point. These guys aren't warriors. They're just standing there, pretending to be tough." The veteran's gaze didn't waver. "That man has seen more than you ever will, and yet he's standing there, enduring your nonsense, without so much as a blink." That tells me everything I need to know about who's stronger here. Nathan's smirk faltered for just a fraction of a second. He glanced back at Ethan, whose face remained unreadable, unaffected. A strange tension hung in the air now. The crowd was no longer just watching. They were judging, and for the first time, Nathan felt it. But he wasn't ready to back down yet. He hadn't gotten the reaction he wanted. His jaw tightened. His fingers curled slightly. He had one more trick up his sleeve, one more way to break this ridiculous, silent charade, and this time, he was going to make sure the guard reacted with a slow, deliberate movement. Nathan Sullivan took a step closer and spat. The moment the glob of spit left Nathan Sullivan's lips, the world seemed to slow down. The crowd, which had been murmuring in discomfort just seconds before, now gasped in collective shock. The saliva struck Ethan Carter's cheek, sliding down the edge of his jaw before dripping onto the polished surface of his rifle. The contrast between the dignified stillness of the soldier and the brazen vulgarity of Nathan's action was almost unbearable to watch. For a moment, the entire square fell silent. A young girl clutched her mother's arm. "Mummy, did he just?" The mother placed a protective hand over her daughter's eyes. "Don't look, darling." The IF veteran, who had earlier warned Nathan to stop, took a slow step forward, gripping his cane so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His lips pressed together in a thin, grim line. Even Nathan's own friends, the same ones who had laughed at his earlier antics, now looked uneasy. The smirks had vanished. A few of them shuffled backward, as if wanting to distance themselves from what had just transpired. But Ethan Carter, he did not move. He did not flinch. His breathing remained steady, his posture unyielding. Nathan's smirk flickered. He had expected no. He had wanted a reaction. A scowl, an angry glare, a flinch, something. But there was nothing. The absolute lack of response made Nathan's victory feel hollow, as though he had somehow lost a battle he thought he was winning. The silence stretched, suffocating. Then, Ethan Carter did something that no one expected. With slow, deliberate precision, he raised his gloved hand, and using just 2 fingers, wiped the spit from his cheek. He did not cringe. He did not grimace. He simply wiped it away as though it were insignificant, as though it were beneath him. And then he resumed his stance, his rifle held firm, his gaze still locked straight ahead. It was the ultimate show of control. It was the ultimate sign of discipline. Nathan, despite his arrogance, felt it the undeniable shift in the air. This man, whom he had tried so hard to break, had just proven beyond any doubt that he was stronger, far stronger, than Nathan could ever hope to be. The crowd began to murmur again, but this time, it was not amusement they expressed. It was respect. It was admiration. And it was judgment not towards Ethan, but towards Nathan Sullivan. An older woman, wearing a pearl necklace and a tailored navy coat, shook her head in disapproval. "Disgusting behavior," she muttered. A nearby man in a business suit, perhaps a local, perhaps a visitor, nodded in agreement. "He's made an utter fool of himself." Even a group of American tourists, standing a few meters away, looked embarrassed. One of them, a young woman in her late 20s, spoke under her breath. "I hope people don't think we're all like that." Nathan noticed the shift. He could feel it. The laughter had stopped. The crowd, which had once been his audience, was now his jury. And in that moment, for the first time since he had started his little game, Nathan Sullivan felt small. But he was not a man who accepted defeat easily. So he doubled down. He let out a forced chuckle, feigning amusement. "Oh, come on," he scoffed. "It's just a joke. You guys are acting like I committed a crime." No one laughed, not even his friends. One of them, Michael, a colleague from New York, shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should go, Nate." Nathan turned sharply. "What?" Michael hesitated. "Look, man, this is different. It's not funny anymore." Nathan's eyes darkened. "Oh, so now you're all turning against me?" No one answered. That was answer enough. He scoffed. "Unbelievable." Then he turned back to Ethan Carter, frustration simmering beneath his skin. "You think you're better than me?" he muttered under his breath, just loud enough for only Ethan to hear. Silence. Ethan did not respond. Nathan clenched his fists. Why won't he react? He wanted needed to see something, anything. Because if Ethan Carter continued to stand there, composed and unshaken, then that meant Nathan had lost. And he could not accept that. So he took a step closer before Nathan could do anything else. A sharp, commanding voice rang out. "Step away from the guard." Now, Nathan whirled around. A Royal Guard officer, dressed in a similar red tunic, but with distinctive insignia, strode towards them. His dark brown eyes were cold, his stance authoritative. Behind him, 2 Metropolitan Police officers were already approaching. The officer's voice was unwavering. "You have disrespected a serving member of the Queen's Guard. You are in violation of conduct expected on royal grounds." Nathan let out a hollow laugh, but it was weaker this time. "Violation? Are you serious?" The officer did not flinch. "If you do not leave immediately, you will be escorted from the premises." Nathan's confidence was crumbling. His usual arrogance was starting to crack under the weight of the situation. Michael, seeing the writing on the wall, grabbed his friend's arm. "Let's go, man. Now." Nathan gritted his teeth. His pride screamed at him to keep fighting. But for the first time in his entire life, he realized something terrifying. He was not in control anymore. He was standing alone, under the eyes of a judgmental crowd, facing the full authority of a military-trained soldier and law enforcement. And there was nothing he could do about it. Slowly, begrudgingly, Nathan Sullivan stepped back, his fists clenched, his face burning with humiliation. And as he turned to leave, the last thing he saw was Ethan Carter, standing tall, unshaken, a man of unbreakable discipline and honor. Nathan Sullivan stormed away from the Buckingham Palace courtyard, his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His pulse pounded in his ears, drowning out the hushed whispers of the crowd behind him. Every step he took felt heavier, burdened not just by the humiliation he had just endured, but also by the unmistakable shift in perception. He had walked into the square thinking himself untouchable, believing that his bravado and sharp tongue could bend the world to his will. But now, as he pushed through the gathered tourists and Londoners, he could feel their eyes on him, not with admiration, not with amusement, but with disgust. The weight of that silent judgment was suffocating. Michael, his colleague and once loyal companion, trailed behind him, his steps hesitant. "Nathan, listen." "Shut up." Nathan's voice was low and sharp, laced with barely contained rage. Michael exhaled through his nose, rubbing his temple. "You know, you really screwed up back there." Nathan whirled around, his face red with fury. "I screwed up? You were laughing just a minute ago." Michael held up his hands in a defensive gesture. "At first, yeah, but then it got serious, man. You crossed a line. And now, look at everyone." He gestured to the lingering bystanders, many of whom were still watching Nathan with contempt. Some whispered to one another. Others recorded on their phones, their faces blank, but their intentions obvious. Nathan felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. He knew exactly what was happening. The internet. He had spent years weaponizing social media for attention, crafting viral moments, stirring controversy, thriving on outrage. But this time, he wasn't in control of the narrative. This time, he was the villain. Michael glanced at his own phone, the screen glowing with incoming notifications. He winced. "Yeah, it's already spreading." Nathan snatched the phone from Michael's hands, his eyes scanning the flood of messages and posts. Twitter, Instagram, Reddit. His name was already trending. "American tourist disrespects Royal Guard humiliated in front of crowd. Some punk just spat on a Queen's Guard. What happened next was perfection. This guy is the epitome of entitlement. London doesn't play games." Attached to every post was the video footage of him mocking Ethan Carter, shoving past warnings, and finally, the moment his spit hit the soldier's face. The slow-motion replays, the sarcastic captions, the zoomed-in reactions of the shocked onlookers, it was all there. Nathan's hands trembled. This is bad." Michael nodded grimly. "No kidding." Nathan's hands trembled. This is bad." Michael nodded grimly. "No kidding." A voice behind them cut through the noise. "Not so funny now, is it?" Nathan turned sharply to find the IF veteran from earlier, the same elderly man who had tried to warn him before. His posture was straight, his eyes piercing. "You thought you could spit on a man of service and walk away like nothing happened?" The veteran took a step closer, his voice low and full of steel. "Son, you've just made an enemy out of every decent person in this country." Nathan had no response. The old man shook his head. "You're lucky that soldier had more honor in his little finger than you have in your whole damn body. If it were me standing in that uniform, I'd have knocked you on your ass." Nathan turned away, unable to hold the veteran's gaze. The weight of reality was suffocating him. Hours later, Nathan sat slumped in his hotel room, staring at his phone in horror. His email was flooded with angry messages. His social media DMs were a battleground of hate comments. His employer, the prestigious media agency in New York, had sent him a blunt email. "Nathan, we need to discuss your behavior in London. We cannot ignore the backlash this incident is creating." Please be available for a call tomorrow morning. His career, his reputation was crumbling in real time. News outlets had picked up the story. BBC, The Guardian, The Daily Mail, even American networks were covering it. His name was being dragged through the mud, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Michael sat on the opposite bed, scrolling through his phone with a tense expression. Jude, you are basically the most hated man in Britain right now. Nathan clenched his jaw. I didn't kill anyone. No, Michael agreed. But you disrespected someone who represents everything people admire: discipline, duty, sacrifice. You spat on more than just a man. You spat on what he stood for. Nathan remained silent. Michael sighed. And the worst part, Ethan Carter still hasn't said a word. He doesn't need to. You already lost. Nathan rubbed his face, exhaustion sinking in. He knew Michael was right. No amount of apologies or damage control could fully erase what had happened. The internet had made up its mind. Desperation gnawed at Nathan. He wasn't the kind of man who could just accept defeat. So, the next morning, he made a decision. He returned to Buckingham Palace. This time, there were no arrogant strides, no smirking entourage, just him alone. The atmosphere felt heavier. Tourists still walked the square, but now some recognized him immediately. A few pointed, others took pictures, and the whispers returned. He ignored them. He had only one goal. He approached the line of Queen's Guards, his gaze scanning their stoic faces. And then he saw him, Ethan Carter, still standing tall, still unwavering. Nathan took a deep breath. His voice, when he finally spoke, was quieter than it had ever been. I was wrong. Silence. Nathan's heart pounded. He had expected this, no response. And yet, standing here, admitting his mistake, he realized something. This wasn't about being forgiven. This was about acknowledging the man he had tried to break, and failed. With one final nod, Nathan Sullivan turned and walked away, carrying the weight of his own mistakes. And behind him, standing in immovable silence, Ethan Carter remained, a man of unshakable honor. Nathan Sullivan walked away from Buckingham Palace, but the weight of his actions clung to him like a heavy chain. His apology, though sincere, had been met with silence. Ethan Carter had stood motionless, his expression unreadable beneath the rigid discipline of a Queen's Guard. But Nathan knew no words could undo what had happened. The damage was done. And now, the only thing left was to face the consequences. Back in his hotel room, Nathan slumped into a chair, his eyes glued to his phone screen. News articles continued to pour in, dissecting his every move. The public's outrage had not softened. If anything, his silent apology at the palace had only fueled more debate. Some commentators speculated that he had gone in search of sympathy, hoping to paint himself as a man who had learned his lesson. Others dismissed it entirely, calling it a weak attempt at damage control. His employer had finally sent the message he had been dreading. Nathan, we regret to inform you that due to recent events, we have decided to terminate your contract, effective immediately. He exhaled shakily. His career, his carefully built image had unraveled in less than 48 hours. And yet, as much as the thought of losing everything stuck, something else lingered in his mind, something far worse than public humiliation. It was the look in the eyes of the people who had watched it all unfold. The veteran, the tourists, the Londoners who had stood by in silent condemnation. Nathan had spent years believing that power came from controlling a situation, controlling the narrative. But Ethan Carter had shattered that illusion. Without a single word, without a single move of defiance, Carter had proven that true strength didn't come from aggression. It came from unwavering discipline, from dignity, from the ability to withstand humiliation without breaking. Nathan had tried to break Carter, and instead, he had broken himself. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Michael stood outside, phone in hand, his face unreadable. You might want to see this. Nathan hesitated before taking the phone. The screen showed a news broadcast, a segment covering the incident at Buckingham Palace. But this time, something was different. The footage being played wasn't just the viral clip of Nathan spitting on Carter. It was what had happened after. The segment showed Ethan Carter, still standing firm, his posture never wavering. But when Nathan had walked away, Carter had done something unexpected, something subtle, almost imperceptible. As Nathan disappeared from sight, Carter's hand had shifted ever so slightly on his rifle, a small, barely noticeable adjustment. The newscaster explained, "What we see here is a rare moment, one that only those trained in military discipline might recognize. This subtle shift in Carter's stance is not a sign of weakness, but of control." Despite the humiliation, despite the provocation, he remained composed. But this small movement, it shows he is human, that even the strongest of men can feel. And yet, he still upheld his duty with absolute restraint. Nathan swallowed hard. He had been so focused on his own downfall that he hadn't considered the weight Carter had carried in that moment. The insult hadn't just been to him as an individual, it had been to the uniform, to centuries of tradition, to the very institution he had sworn to protect. And yet, Carter had endured it all without a single word. Nathan Sullivan sat in the near-empty CAF, stirring a cup of untouched coffee. The warmth of the mug did little to settle the cold pit in his stomach. Days had passed since the incident, and the world had moved on, but he hadn't. The weight of his actions still clung to him. Across from him sat Michael, scrolling through his phone. "You're still trending," he muttered, "though people have started shifting their focus to something else. Some politician's scandal, I think." He put the phone down and studied Nathan. "So, what now?" Nathan didn't answer immediately. His mind wasn't on the public's reaction anymore. It wasn't even on his ruined career. It was on the man he had humiliated, the man who had endured it all without a single word of protest. Ethan Carter. After a long pause, Nathan finally spoke. "I want to meet him." Michael raised an eyebrow. "And say what?" Nathan didn't know. Later that day, he found himself standing outside the barracks where the Queen's Guard was stationed. He had no appointment, no real expectation that Carter would even acknowledge him. But he had to try. After waiting for nearly an hour, Nathan finally saw him. Ethan Carter, dressed in civilian clothes, exiting the barracks with the same composed demeanor he had held that day at Buckingham Palace. He was off duty now, free from the rigid posture and discipline of his station. Nathan took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Carter," the soldier stopped and turned, his expression unreadable. For a moment, there was silence. Then Nathan spoke. "I don't expect you to forgive me. He exhaled, struggling to find the right words. "I was wrong." Carter studied him for a long moment, his gaze steady. Finally, he spoke. "Yes, you were." Nathan nodded. "I don't know how to make it right." Carter's expression didn't change. "Some things can't be undone," he said simply. "Only learned from." The words struck deeper than any insult ever could. Nathan had spent years living as if he were untouchable, as if power meant never having to answer for his actions. But now, standing before this man, a man who had proven strength through restraint, he realized how little he truly understood about respect. Ethan Carter didn't offer forgiveness. He didn't need to. His silence that day had been his answer, and his words now were the lesson Nathan had to carry forward. As Carter walked away, Nathan remained standing there, feeling something he hadn't felt in years: humility.